Good morning. My name's Brad Bonkowski and I'm a supervisor in Carson City, and this is It's Your City. Today I'd like to recap the items that we discussed and the actions that we took at the Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday, Thursday, December 5th. One of the first items that we took up yesterday was approving a contract for a firm to do a national search for a new city manager. You may or may not know that our city manager, Larry Werner, has made a decision to retire, and so we're now faced with replacing him. We've hired a firm, Ralph Anderson, and we approved a contract with them yesterday for $35,000. The process should take approximately 120 days, and then they will bring to the Board of Supervisors a limited number of qualified candidates, and then we will do the final interviews and make a selection for a replacement. They will do the initial interviews and they will narrow the field down from whatever number of applicants they get down to, say, 3 to 5 applicants. In the interim, the department heads and Marina Works, our deputy city manager, will continue to run the day-to-day operations of the city. One of the other items that we took up under the consent agenda was accepting a federal grant for the installation of an electric car charging station at Mills Park. So we will see what the usage is of this charging station, but be assured it isn't going to cost the taxpayers of Carson City any money, at least on a local level. It'll be at the federal level through a federal grant. Another one of the items that we took up yesterday was to make a decision on the ethics ordinance that was in place in Carson City. There is an ethics ordinance both for Carson City and at the state level. So we formed a committee to look at the two ordinances to try to reconcile them and come back to us with information on which ordinance we should actually follow. So we did that. We created the committee. We heard from them with their recommendations, and their recommendation was to repeal or revoke the Carson City ordinance and follow the state ordinance, because the state ordinance is more restrictive and has a higher level of rules for elected officials and city employees to follow. So we did take them up on their recommendation. We repealed the Carson City ethics ordinance, and then immediately following the repeal of the Carson City ordinance, we passed a resolution to follow the state ordinance for ethics. So we are under the jurisdiction of the State Board of Ethics, and any complaints that would be filed against an elected official or a city employee would then be heard by the State Ethics Board. We also received a report from the Carson City Water Sub-Conservancy on the condition of our watershed. Our watershed runs from Alpine County in California through Douglas County, Carson City, into Lyon County, a very small portion of Story County, and then out into Churchill County, ending in the Fallon area. It's a very complex system. We don't have a mandated water authority that has the power to create law. What we have is a sub-conservancy that comes back to us with recommendations and sits down with everybody at the table, and then all the stakeholders come to an agreement, and then we follow that policy. That has worked very well for us, rather than having the state mandate items for us to follow. So that system has worked well. The report that we received yesterday from the sub-conservancy is that our water system is currently in good shape. However, there are concerns going forward with climate change, the amount of the snowpack that we receive each year because we have very limited upstream storage. So the vast majority of our water comes from the snowpack. So if we have a light snow year, then that causes problems downstream for us. So for now we're okay, but moving forward there are things that we will probably have to address so that we can keep enough water here for everybody to use. Again, it's a very complex system, and I would invite anybody that is interested to read some of the reports that they've put out, although they're pretty long and they can be pretty dry. We also finalized some amendments to the animal services ordinance. It was just basically some housekeeping items. As you may know, we completely revamped the animal services ordinance earlier this year. Then we had some issues come up subsequent to that, and we've now corrected some of the items that were made aware to us from the original ordinance. And we've corrected those. Most of them were definitions and some policy changes and some timing issues. So we addressed that yesterday, so now we have completed basically a year-long process to try to get our animal services ordinance in shape. Now, of course, moving forward, we still need to address at some point our animal services facility. One of the other items that we worked on yesterday was a public hearing on the bonds that we're going to issue for the upgrades to the water system and the sewage treatment facility. We have a $6 million bond for the water part of the program and basically a $25 million bond for the sewage treatment plant so that we can make upgrades and replacements. We've been working on this for about a year now, and after this public hearing, then there is a notice period for people to submit comments, and then we will come back with approvals for the actual issuance of those bonds. So that should happen over the course of the next 30 to 60 days. One of the other items that we took yesterday that is in conjunction with the water and sewer bonds is we created a financial oversight committee for these utility bonds. So we will now have basically a citizens committee that will look at how the money from these bond issuances are spent to make sure that the city is following their policy. And part of that policy that we approved was that we were increasing rates to set aside money for replacements and depreciation expense, which is a policy that we have not followed in the past and put us in a position of where we didn't have money set aside to make equipment replacements or capital improvements at the sewage treatment plant when we needed to. So we accumulated a lot of deferred maintenance, and that led to us having to institute some pretty significant rate increases so that we can set aside the reserves and so we can actually make these repairs and replacements going forward. Now there'll be an additional layer of transparency and we can be held to account, and by we I mean city staff and the Board of Supervisors, if we don't follow our own policy in spending this money, which is coming from the ratepayers. So hopefully that system will work well and will give the citizens of Carson City and the ratepayers of Carson City a level of comfort that we are actually doing the right thing the right way. One of the really interesting items that we took up yesterday was an item to take action to give our staff the authority to work with the bankruptcy court and Dwight Millard on Empire Ranch Golf Course. The golf course right now is in bankruptcy court, and our concern is that we need the land of the golf course, of actually all three golf courses, to place the effluent, the treated water from the sewage treatment plant after we've treated it. We can't afford to lose any of the golf courses because we would then have no place to put a portion of the effluent, which would violate our permit from the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection to discharge that water. So right now we put it on the golf courses and we put it on the prison farm south of town. There's a clause in the contract that we have with Empire Ranch Golf Course that says that the owner of the property can terminate the agreement to accept the effluent with 1 year's notice. Because the property is in bankruptcy court, our fear is that somebody could purchase the property through the bankruptcy court and then terminate the agreement to accept the effluent, and then Carson City would be in a predicament trying to solve in a very limited period of time. We'd either need to build a new facility to accept that effluent or to treat the water to a higher standard, or we would have to be out of compliance with our permits and we'd be subject to fines. So we want to seat at the table with the bankruptcy court and with Mr. Millard to make sure that we can protect our interests there. And one of those options would be for the city to actually purchase the property so we control our own destiny. At this point, nothing is set in stone. We only want a seat at the table, and we did approve that action, and then immediately after that we approved spending some money to have the property appraised so that we have an understanding of what the cost of purchasing that property is if we were to go down that road. This may be purchasing the property through the bankruptcy court could be the least expensive option of all of our options to ensure our ability to stay in compliance with our discharge permits. And we will be coming back to the public in the future with the results of those items. So that is the actions that we took yesterday at the meeting. As always, the Board of Supervisors would love to hear from you, all 5 of us. So if you have any questions on the agenda items that we took up yesterday, please feel free to give myself or any of the supervisors or the mayor a call, and we'd be happy to meet with you to answer all of your questions. Thank you, and have a great holiday season.